My dad kicked me out of the house without hesitation when my stepmom said she needed my room for her crafts or peace of mind. I quietly moved out and never looked back. But now, months later, he's suddenly calling and asking me to come back home. Not because he misses me, but because my grandfather found out what he did and is now charging him full rent for the house he used to let him live in for free. When I was 14, I lost my mom. 3 years later, at 17, my dad remarried. My stepmom has a daughter, who's 15, and then she and my dad had a son, who's now 3. Recently, they welcomed a baby girl. I've been working since I was 16 to buy my own things. When I turned 18, Dad told me I was an adult and needed to pay rent. It was $500, which he called a symbolic amount since he'd still cover food and other essentials. I was upset, and we argued, but eventually, I agreed. That was the arrangement until 7 months ago. Dad told me I had 2 months to move out. My stepmom was pregnant, and they needed my room for the new baby. This seemed crazy to me because both my dad and stepmom have private offices. My stepmom doesn't even need hers, as she's a stay-at-home mom since my brother was born. Still, they insisted I had to leave. Just to clarify, my stepmom and I actually get along well. We don't fight, and I don't think this was a wicked stepmom situation, though who knows. My stepsister and I are also very close. I help her with homework, and we talk about her personal problems. I truly love her. Back to the story, I didn't know what to do. I'm a college student studying civil engineering and working part-time. I couldn't afford to live on my own. I called my aunt, asking if I could stay with her temporarily and offering to pay rent. She was shocked by what my dad was doing and immediately said I could live with her, no rent needed. She also said she'd talk to my dad. The next day, my grandpa came over. He and my dad talked privately. I could hear my dad's angry voice, but couldn't make out what they were saying. Afterward, Grandpa came to my room and gave me 3 options. I could continue living with Dad and stepmom, with nothing changing except I wouldn't pay rent. Or I could move in with him and Grandma, or with my aunt. The third option was to find my own place, and he'd cover the rent and costs. He told me I didn't have to decide right away and could stay with Dad for now, just to let him know if I changed my mind. I was relieved, thinking the craziness was over and I could still live at home. However, in the following days and weeks, Dad and stepmom were very hostile toward me. I felt incredibly uncomfortable in my own home. Even Cassie, my stepsister, noticed and asked why they were angry with me. So, I decided to move out and told Grandpa. He said he'd handle everything. A few weeks later, he moved me into one of his rental units. The apartment is lovely, and he bought me a fridge, stove, and other essentials. He also gave me a check for $15,000, saying it was to help me start my new life and that I could live there rent-free as long as I was working or studying. My dad and I have had very little contact since I moved out. He's never visited me, nor have I visited them. I miss them a lot, especially my stepsister, but I'm still hurt. 2 weeks ago, my stepmom gave birth. I visited them in the hospital. It was a little awkward, but nice to see them and my baby sister. A few days ago, Dad called me. He said he missed me, and the children missed me, and I should move back home. He apologized for asking me to move out, and so on. I told him I'd think about it. Yesterday, I visited my aunt and told her what my dad said. My cousin chuckled and said, sure he does. I asked what he meant, and that's when they told me a lot of information I never knew. Basically, my dad's house is actually owned by my grandpa, as is my aunt's house. Grandpa had made similar arrangements with all his kids and some grandkids. He never wanted any of his family to worry about basic necessities like housing and food. When I called my aunt that time, she called Grandpa, who was furious with Dad, not just for kicking me out, but for charging me rent. That day, Grandpa went to my dad's house and gave him a piece of his mind, even threatening to evict him. Now for the petty part. That $15,000 Grandpa gave me, that's actually all the rent I paid Dad during that time. And now, Grandpa is making Dad pay him back. Plus, he's charging Dad $1,200 for the lost rent on the apartment I'm living in. Call me naive, but until now, I never realized my dad didn't make that much money. We lived in a great house, always went on vacations, and lived very comfortably. But I guess Grandpa had always been helping behind the scenes. My cousin thinks Dad is struggling now with 3 kids, a single income, and having to pay Grandpa back. He believes Dad wants me back because he imagines Grandpa will stop punishing him if I move back in. Honestly, I don't know what to do. I'm actually loving living on my own these past 6 months, but I really do miss them, especially my siblings. Update 1: the Monday after my post, I called Dad and told him I decided not to move back. I didn't mention what I'd learned, just that I was settled and moving back felt like a step backward. But I also said I wanted to stay in touch, and they could invite me for dinner anytime. I also said I'd love for my stepsister and brother to spend time at my place. He sounded disappointed but not angry, simply saying, "I'll see," and ending the call. I was disappointed too. But then, on Friday, he called and asked if I wanted to have lunch Sunday. I already had plans with Grandpa and Grandma, so he asked when I'd be free. We scheduled dinner for Thursday. I haven't told my stepsister any of this. We text and talk regularly. She hasn't heard them talking about me either, but she did say her grandma, her mom's mom, is there helping with the baby and is incredibly annoying. I laughed at that. I wanted to offer for her to sleep over, but didn't want to get her excited only for Dad to say no. So, I'll try to talk with them Thursday. The big update. I just got back from visiting Grandpa and Grandma. We had a lovely day. I also told them I wanted to know everything that was going on. I wasn't a kid anymore, and I felt like I was living a lie. The most important things were what my cousin and aunt told me last week, but there were a few more details. Grandpa had been subsidizing many of our basic needs, like school and healthcare, because Dad hadn't saved much, according to Grandpa. Also, my college fund was mainly contributed by him and Mom before she passed. I guess that makes sense. I was naive not to realize it sooner. He's also set up funds for my baby siblings and my stepsister, so she wouldn't feel left out or not have the same opportunities. This man is incredible. I love him so much. And yes, I'm very, very lucky. I've seen so many people commenting this, not derogatorily, but very supportively. I know I'm privileged to have grandparents and family members who can afford and are willing to help me. I hope one day I can help others the way they're helping me. Anyway, I also expressed worries about Dad's financial situation, and Grandpa assured me Dad is fine, more than fine. He'll have to be less frivolous with money for a while, but he would never let any of his kids or grandkids suffer or be in need. As many of you said, he's trying to teach Dad a lesson he should have taught him a long time ago. So I'll stay out of it. I don't think I'll tell Dad that I know all of this. I know many of you said to confront him, but I think it's best if he keeps thinking I'm oblivious. Lastly, we talked about why Dad kicked me out. Grandpa didn't have an answer either. I could see he and Grandma were very hurt by what Dad did. He said he asked for an explanation, but got none. That's it for now. I'll continue trying to have a relationship with my siblings outside of my dad and stepmom. I'll also try to schedule some weekly dinners with them. I know what you guys said about my father is mostly true, but I need to at least try to have a relationship with him. If not for him, then for my siblings and for me. But don't worry, I won't let him hurt me anymore. I hope things go well for you. There isn't much of an update, but some people messaged me asking about how dinner went. Last Thursday, I went there after work. Gosh, I missed my siblings so much, and I spent the majority of the time with them. My baby brother isn't a baby anymore. He's grown so much. My baby sister is so cute I could eat her alive. I never want to be apart from them again, no matter what happens. Cassie, my stepsister, is the only one I maintained regular contact with, through calls and texts. She's an amazing person. She knows I didn't move out under the best circumstances, but doesn't know the details or anything about the money. I asked if she wanted to have a sleepover at my place sometime, and she was thrilled. If I hadn't stopped her, she would have started packing right then. My stepmom's mom was still there helping with the baby. And guess where she's staying? In my old bedroom. They transformed it into a guest room. The baby's room is my stepmom's old office because it's closer to the master bedroom. Honestly, that hurt a little. I've only met my stepmom's parents a few times. They were always nice to me. This time, she kept looking at me strangely, no matter where I was or where I moved, like she expected me to try and steal something. When I was holding the baby, she didn't leave my side. Anyway, besides that, dinner went as well as you can imagine. A little awkward, but I was glad I could see my siblings and spend a few hours playing with them. At the end, I mentioned Cassie having a sleepover on the weekend. Her grandmother immediately said no. Cassie would absolutely not go. But to my surprise, my stepmom stopped her. She said if Cassie wanted, I could pick her up Saturday after soccer practice for dinner. That was that. When I was leaving, my stepmom gave me a really tight hug. So many people were saying she's just an evil stepmom that I kind of started to believe it. But as I said in my first post, we always had a good relationship. I left very confused and emotional. Saturday afternoon, I picked up Cassie. We watched Inside Out 2, then ate shawarma for the first time, which is basically a meat burrito. I don't see the difference, but it was so good to spend the day with her. I'm so glad to have her in my life. Sunday, I dropped her off and went inside to see my other siblings. Dad wasn't there. He was out meeting a work friend. Some people asked what my dad does. He's a lawyer. My stepmom used to work for an advertising company, but is now a stay-at-home mom. We have another dinner scheduled for Friday. I don't know if I'll ever find out exactly why they wanted me to move or why they charged me rent. I don't want to bring it up now because I don't want to jeopardize my relationship with my siblings. So I don't know if I'll have any more updates. Since things are settling down and it's just life now, Update 2. I had another dinner with my parents the Friday before last. My stepmom's mom, whom I'll call Evie, meaning evil, was still giving me dirty looks, but I ignored her. I had scheduled dinner with them for last Friday and was talking to them about taking my little brother to the park yesterday. But Wednesday, my dad called, asking if I could postpone dinner and instead go to Grandpa's on Saturday because he needed to talk with the whole family. Meanwhile, I'd been talking to Cassie, and she'd been telling me my stepmom and Evie have been fighting. A lot. Well, last Sunday my stepmom's father showed up. I'll call him Lay, meaning lying bastard. There was a big fight, and Lay and Evie went back home on Monday. So yesterday afternoon, I went to Grandpa's. My aunt was there, and then Dad and stepmom arrived with Cassie. Dad was clearly embarrassed. He apologized to me, to my grandparents, and to my stepmom as well. Dad gave an explanation for everything that had happened in the last few years. Some things I already knew, but Cassie didn't. She was present for the whole thing. So I'll try to explain everything here. I don't know how clear I'll be, but I hope you can follow. Years ago, Grandpa and a friend started a successful company. When Dad was 25, Grandpa sold the company and made a lot of money, so he decided to gift each of his children a home. He gave his kids $350,000 each, with the promise they'd use it to buy homes or pay off mortgages. Grandpa had seen people lose their homes and didn't want that to happen to his kids. However, Dad didn't buy a home. He moved to New York to start his own law practice and become a big, successful lawyer. As you can imagine, things didn't turn out so well for him. Half a decade later, he had no money left and couldn't pay rent, so he reached out to Grandpa and moved back home. Grandpa helped him find a job with a friend of his. After a while, Dad started to get his life back together, rented a home, and moved out of Grandpa's place. He met my mom, and they started dating. They fell in love. Before they married, Grandpa came to them and said he would give them a home. He had already talked with his other kids, and they were fine with it. But because he didn't trust Dad, and so Dad's future kids would always have a roof over their heads, the home would stay in his name, and in his will, it would go directly to Dad's kids. So I was actually mistaken before. My uncles and aunt don't live in homes owned by Grandpa. Only my dad does, and I think 2 of my cousins as well. Next, I was born. Life was good for a while. Then Mom passed away. Dad struggled with taking care of me alone. That's when Grandpa started helping financially. A few more years, Dad met Stepmom. But Dad was embarrassed about not owning the house, and that Grandpa was helping him, so he never told her any of this. To her, Dad was just a moderately successful lawyer. They married. She became pregnant. She asked if she could become a full-time stay-at-home mom, and Dad was embarrassed to say no. So he told her it was fine. Meanwhile, now with 3 kids plus a stay-at-home wife, Dad was struggling even more. Grandpa was helping more, and Dad's savings were diminishing daily. Dad admits he kind of threw Stepmom under the bus to Grandpa, blaming her for his financial problems so Grandpa would continue helping for the kids' sake. Now I need to go back a little and talk about Lay and Evie. They thought Dad was a rich, successful lawyer, and they started telling Dad how he was spoiling me, how I'd be irresponsible with money, how I had an easy life. How Lay, when he was my age, had to pay rent to his dad, and he did the same with his son, Stepmom's brother, and how successful they became, never needing anything from anybody, pulling themselves up by their bootstraps, etc. And apparently, that got into Dad's head. He became afraid I'd be dependent on him, or more likely Grandpa and his money, instead of being successful on my own. He became afraid I'd be a failure like him, still needing his dad to bail him out. So he started getting parenting advice from his in-laws. Why not ask his own dad, who's much more successful and raised 3 of his kids to be successful as well? I asked, and apparently, it's because he felt embarrassed. That comes up again and again to explain Dad's actions. Embarrassment. He didn't want Grandpa to think even less of him. Therefore, the rent idea, which was a suggestion from Lay. Dad says his initial plan was to save the money and give it to me later. But with a new kid, my stepmom not working and trying to project to his in-laws how things were fine, saving the money became impossible, according to him. By the way, he also lied to me at the time, saying it's a normal thing to do, that Grandpa had done it to him and his kids, which is a lie I discovered 8 months ago, but with everything else that happened, that seems small at the time. There's a detail I didn't disclose in my previous posts because it didn't matter, or so I thought, and that is I'm part of the LGBTQIA+ community. I don't hide this fact. In fact, I was already out to my mom before her passing, but it's not something I advertise either. That'll become relevant later. Anyway, continuing, Lay became Dad's confidant, and Dad started opening up to him about his money troubles. Lay started suggesting things like I should move out, which Dad initially rejected. Then Stepmom became pregnant again, and Dad panicked. That's when Lay and Evie came to Dad and said they would help him not only financially, but Evie would move in with him and stay after the baby to help out, and even convince Stepmom to go back to work since Evie would be there taking care of the kids. But for that, I needed to move out. Their reason was that the home wouldn't be able to accommodate Evie, and that it was time I left the nest, etc. So they convinced Dad I needed to move out. Dad didn't tell any of this, only that he thought it was best for me and that the coming baby was just a great opportunity. According to them, Stepmom was against this, but Dad pulled the I know best for my daughter card, so she deferred to him. They tell me I need to move out. I talked about this from my point of view. That day, Grandpa goes to my dad's home, and they have a huge fight. Not only Dad and Grandpa, but Dad and Stepmom, because it was then that she discovered Dad didn't own the house. Dad had almost no savings, and Dad was dependent on Grandpa. Dad's deal with her parents was still a secret. At this point, I asked why she acted so hostile towards me after that day, so much that it made me feel unwelcome and want to move out. She looked shocked. She apologized to me and started to cry, saying that she was never mad at me, but at Dad, that she had no idea she was to blame for me moving out. I was crying as well. I said it's not her fault. And guys, I know many of you have said bad things about her, and I don't blame you, but I do believe her. The look on her face when I said I felt unwelcome and that's why I moved out, it's not something you can fake. Now I'm thinking she's as much a victim of my dad's actions as me, and all. This time, she was just trying to give me space. So, going back to events, I move out. Grandpa not only cuts Dad off from all financial support, but starts charging him money for the house. The only thing he continued paying for is Cassie's education. Now everything is in the open, and Dad and Stepmom have to cut everything. Dinners, expensive foods, sell her car, etc. Lay and Evie give them some money as well to help out. My stepmom is stressed out, pregnant with a lying husband. I'm actually sad for her and what she went through. I was looking at Grandpa, and I could see he was as well. I don't think he realized the amount of stress he was placing on her. I don't know how he will proceed from now on regarding Dad and the house. Before the baby is born, Evie moves in with Dad and Stepmom. The baby is born. Things are normal. But with a new baby, Dad feels even more guilty over what happened, and that's when he calls me again. This part one already told you. Jumping to when I went to dinner the first time, Dad and Stepmom also recognized Evie acting strange towards me. After I left, they talked. Nothing came from it, but Stepmom kept talking to Dad about her mom, and Dad started to tell her his conversations with Evie and Lay about money and raising kids, etc. After my second dinner, Stepmom confronted her mom, and they had a huge fight. And apparently, that's when she said something along the lines of, "I can't believe you're letting that slur back into your home after getting rid of her." And that's when the coin dropped for Dad, and he realized how much of a fool he had been. They kicked Evie out. Lay came to pick her up, and they had another fight. Dad actually wanted to act like nothing had happened, continue with me visiting and rebuilding the relationship, but Stepmom put her foot down and said he needed to come clean about everything, not only to me but Cassie and everyone as well. And so we came to the present. I was crying. Stepmom was crying. Cassie was crying. Dad was crying. I was crying. Grandpa was crying. Grandma, who hadn't said a single word, was holding me tight. According to Dad, that's all. No more lies, no more deception. Dad and Stepmom left after that. I slept at Grandpa's because I was in no state to drive. Came home this morning, took a long shower, cried a lot. And now I'm typing this out to see if it helps me make sense of all of this, make sense of my thoughts and feelings. I guess that's the end of the story. I don't know what I'm going to do now. I feel sad, angry, sorry for Stepmom and Cassie. I feel everything and nothing. Update 3 after the family summit at Grandpa's, which ended with all of us basically a human puddle, I tried to step back and just breathe. Stepmom texted me a super long apology again and actually asked if she could talk just the two of us. No dad, no kids, no parents, just her and me, whenever I was ready. I didn't answer right away, but after 2 days, I agreed. We met at this little bakery on Main Street that's open late, and I think she cried from the second we sat down. I almost did too, but something in me just kind of braced. We talked for like 3 hours. She opened up about how she's always felt out of her depth with my dad's level of living. Her words, her assumption before she knew the money truth, and how Evie and Lay, I can't not use those names anymore. They've stuck in my brain, sorry, have always insisted her job as a real wife was to back up her husband to the hilt, not question money, not challenge decisions, and definitely not ever vent her own worries. So basically, behind the scenes, she didn't confront my dad about weird choices like kicking me out because her own parents trained her to just smooth over everything for her husband. The total opposite of what Grandpa would have told her and did tell her at the summit. She said something like, If I'd known the money wasn't real, maybe I would have been bolder or at least honest with you. I told her that boldness would have been welcome from day one, but it wasn't just on her. None of us had the truth by the end. The weird thing is, I just felt pity for her. She asked if she could bring the baby by for me to meet without all the in-law drama, and I said yes. We've scheduled weekly coffee dates for now, where we're forbidden from talking about the past or my dad, just life. I think we both really need it. The next plot twist. Cassie asked to sleep over again and didn't want to go home, like at all. She waited until about midnight after a movie and then just started sharing everything. Part of it was teenager stuff, for sure, but also Cassie is apparently furious at Dad for lying to Stepmom about everything, for making her feel guilty for loving me, and honestly, now doesn't trust anyone over 30 except Grandpa and Grandma. This is a new side of her. She demanded to know if she could come live with me in my apartment if things get too toxic. I explained legal stuff and that Grandpa has to okay it officially, but after talking to Grandpa, who, let's be real, rules our family's universe from his kitchen with cookies, the answer isn't no, it's maybe. Let's watch. For now, it's just more sleepovers and a standing invite anytime she wants to escape. Dad texted me a few times since the big reveal. The first was kind of generic. Hope you're all right. Take your time. I love you. Then a paragraph. A few days later that tried to explain why he let Lay and Evie have so much influence. I was scared you'd fail my way. I got desperate. He's promising therapy for all of us if we want. I haven't answered yet. Maybe I will, maybe not. I'm just really burned out by his apologies and explanations. Every time it circles back to him being scared or embarrassed. And frankly, at this point, everyone is scared or embarrassed. But most of us didn't upend someone else's life over it. Now for the truly crazy development and the true nuclear-level family drama. Because of everything that happened, Grandpa found out that Lay and Evie have been quietly borrowing and siphoning funds out of a trust he set up years ago for Stepmom and Cassie, using paperwork Stepmom signed for them when she was a kid. This is the kind of thing Grandpa's accountant cousin discovered. Apparently, don't mess with Grandpa's accountant cousin. Let's just say the coming weeks will include not only a family lawyer, but possibly the police. Definitely a messy confrontation. And no more EB crossing any threshold in our family unless she comes to return what she borrowed. I only know about this because she called me in a panic after Grandpa called her. She was humiliated and terrified. I told her this time, don't let Dad talk you into silence. Let Grandpa help you. Grandpa and Grandma, meanwhile, have basically inserted themselves into all our lives. Grandpa is making up for lost time, planning sibling weekends where all the kids, Cassie, my brother, baby sister, me, come hang at his house, and he's teaching Cassie card counting for blackjack and my little brother how to fix a bike flat. He set up an appointment for me with his money person so I can finally understand what a Roth IRA is. Grandpa's new rule, no more secrets. Family is a team, and if someone needs help, you actually say it. If this runs anything like his company did, I suspect in 6 months, Cassie will be a currency trader and my brother will be deep in Lego architecture. As for me, I'm doing better than I thought possible post-meltdown. I'm keeping my apartment. Grandpa says it's now legally mine. Until I graduate. I have groceries delivered every Sunday by Grandma herself, who says it's not charity, it's tradition. Cassie and I are making a list of all the places we want to visit, and after the summer semester, we'll start ticking them off. I'm still working part-time, still hacking away at civil engineering classes. Now with the bonus that my study breaks involve long, how government works, chats with Grandpa. And Dad? Honestly, I don't know yet. He's in therapy, real therapy. He sent me proof of his appointment, like a teenager trying to prove he did his homework, and he's reaching out quietly. Not like before. Maybe we'll build back a relationship. But this time, I've got boundaries and a whole cheering squad behind me, not just quietly keeping me afloat, but out loud, in the open, and making sure I never, ever feel like a stranger in my own family again. Update 4 since my last update. The investigation into the trust fund stuff has basically torn my stepmom's side of the family wide open. Grandpa's accountant cousin, let's name him Ed since he's now practically the head of the family's internal affairs department, found that Lay and EB didn't just quietly dip into Stepmom and Cassie's trust. They essentially used those documents to leverage personal loans, launder some of Lay's gambling losses, and the one that set Grandpa off, forged signatures to sign off on money transfers that, when translated from legalese, basically meant my stepmom unknowingly handed over her college savings as a teenager to cover Lay's investments. Investments in what? Turns out it's a string of failed vending machine businesses and at least one pop-up hot dog cart in Des Moines. Grandpa went full war general. There was a family council. except this time over Zoom so as not to cause spontaneous combustion in anyone's living room. Ed, Grandpa, Stepmom, Cassie, and I were on the first call. My dad was lurking awkwardly in the background, pretending to check his email but clearly listening to every word. Ed read out the details in his best courtroom voice. You could have heard a pin drop. Stepmom was shaking. Cassie kept swearing under her breath, which Grandpa, of course, pointed out was inappropriate for a lady but fine for a furious grandchild. By the end, nobody even felt angry at Lay and Eb so much as numb with disbelief. Stepmom's first move was to meet with a lawyer recommended by Grandpa. She's pursuing criminal charges. I offered to come with, but she wanted to do the first step herself for once. Apparently, there's a good shot at recovering at least some of the missing money, but more importantly, having everything out in the open has given Stepmom a backbone I honestly never saw in her before. She told my dad this point blank in front of me, Cassie, and Grandpa during a dinner at their kitchen table. If you ever hide something from me again out of shame, don't expect me to stick around. Dad literally nodded for once, didn't object, and just said, I deserve that. Meanwhile, the home front has turned into something that almost resembles good sitcom chaos. My baby brother has decided his only life goal is to become the world's smallest contractor and carries around a toy tape measure and clipboard, offering to inspect every piece of furniture in my apartment. Baby sister giggles at everything and is basically a champion at grabbing things she shouldn't. Cassie has, true to her word, become something of a tiny revolutionary. She shrugged off Stepmom's old, let's annoy Dad by not doing homework tricks and now just asks Grandpa to quiz her for history while she makes cookies with Grandma. She says she likes living in the truth, which is obnoxiously wise for a 15-year-old, but also painfully true. Most weekends she's here or with Grandpa, working on a kind of informal summer project to document all of this into a family memoir, or at least a scandalous Tumblr, as she puts it. Dad is deep in therapy, real therapy. I only see him at family dinners. Our relationship is cautiously civil, even capable of joking about some things. He tries to parent my siblings, but it's more honest now, like actually admitting when he's clueless and not pretending to have answers about tax returns or why you should never eat yogurt that expired last year. Ask Ed. That's what smart people do, he said to Cassie last week. A wild turn came last Thursday. Out of nowhere, Grandpa proposed a family trust day. All the grandkids, that's me, Cassie, my little brother, and my baby sister, plus 2 cousins, would get together, and he would run us through how all the family helps work, who to talk to when you need stuff, and what to do if you have big life storms. It was pretty adorable watching my 3-year-old brother sign a paper declaring him future president of Snacks, Grandpa solemnly handing him a chocolate gold coin. But the whole point was clear. Secrets lead to heartbreak. Grandpa said, knowledge helps you make your own safety net. Later in the afternoon, when Cassie and I were lounging on the porch while Grandpa and Grandma played with the little ones, she looked at me and said, it's weird, but I actually feel safe for the first time in forever. Then she said she wants to start a Sister's Day. Just us, exploring local places, eating weird food, and taking brutally honest selfies. We started with samosas and walking around the running track, venting. It was only a couple hours, but it honestly felt like years of that weird, sad distance just melted. She is my family. No step required. Stepmom, meanwhile, is being a force of nature. She handed over almost all family finances to Grandpa's accountant until she finishes Adulting 101. She's hunting for part-time work. Finally, she says she's excited, not ashamed, and asked me if I'd be her reference for job applications. Wednesday, Grandpa is accompanying her to the police station to sign some initial paperwork against Lay and Eb. I may go with just for moral support and snacks. And she started going to therapy, which makes the entire grown-up roster in my family now proudly with a therapist, as Grandpa put it. I spent the weekend setting up a small budget with Ed and learning about financial guardrails. Apparently, I actually have a small fund Grandpa seeded for me once I moved out. He wanted me to have a starting point after all the mess, not just the $15,000. This is new from him personally, enough to help with a down payment someday, or as he says, to take time off if you fall in love with a country far away. I cried when I found out, obviously. For the first time in years, I feel entirely free, like no one's waiting to shoehorn me back into some parental pride story or force me back into a family role I didn't write. My apartment is a crash pad for siblings, a study den, and occasionally, the only place I can just breathe. I've joined a local hiking group with a couple friends from college, started journaling for myself, not just read it, and this fall, Grandma's teaching me how to make her famous lasagna so she can pass on the family magic. Will it ever really be done drama-wise? I doubt it. Grandpa says there's no such thing as finished when it comes to family. But I can see every day that something beautifully ordinary is returning to all of us. We're not perfect. Dad's still awkward. Stepmom's still anxious. Cassie's still moody. I'm still overthinking. But we're real and honest and kind of awesome at facing things together. Now Cassie and I joke that if it ever quiets down, we'll have to invent drama to stay entertained. But for now, things feel good. Real for the first time. I believe that's enough, and maybe even more than enough.